singer who Simon described as having a voice like liquid gold.
Which, coincidentally, is also what Simon uses to wash his face. Liquid gold. It's Alice Fredenham.
The entertainment industry is filled with stories of meteoric rises and crushing falls, but few are quite as haunting as the tale of Alice Fredenham. A woman whose voice captivated millions in a single moment chose to walk away from it all when success seemed within reach. Today, we're diving deep into the mystery surrounding this talented vocalist, exploring what led her to abandon the spotlight and where she is now, years after her unexpected disappearance from the public eye. When Alice Fredenham first emerged on the British entertainment scene, she did so quietly and without fanfare. Unlike many aspiring musicians who dream of fame from childhood, Alice's journey to the stage came later in life. At 28 years old, she decided to audition for The Voice UK in 2013, hoping to finally share her passion for music with a broader audience. It was an attempt that would teach her a painful lesson about rejection and the brutal nature of the entertainment business. Standing backstage with her heart pounding, Alice prepared to perform the classic jazz standard, The Lady is a Tramp. She had spent countless hours perfecting her craft, rehearsing in intimate venues and pouring her soul into the music. But when she stepped into the spotlight that night, something went terribly wrong. As she sang, not a single judge turned their chair to face her. The silence that followed was deafening, a kind of rejection that cuts deeper than any words could ever do. She left the stage that evening carrying the weight of that moment, the sting of being overlooked despite her undeniable talent. For most people, this kind of rejection would mark the end of their musical aspirations. But Alice was different. Instead of giving up entirely, she internalized the experience and began preparing for another chance. She knew she couldn't perform the same audition, couldn't walk the same path that had led to disappointment. So she made a bold decision. She would audition for Britain's Got Talent, a platform known for discovering unexpected talent. What made this decision particularly courageous was her determination to keep it secret. She didn't tell her friends, her family, or even her boyfriend about this new opportunity. She carried this secret alone, quietly rehearsing and preparing herself mentally for what she hoped would be a turning point. However, Alice's relationship with performance was complicated. Stage fright wasn't simply a case of pre-show jitters for her. It was a severe form of anxiety that manifested physically. Her hands would tremble uncontrollably. Her voice would sometimes freeze mid-phrase. The panic attacks that preceded performances would leave her feeling physically ill and emotionally drained. She described feeling utterly unworthy of being on stage, even though rationally she knew her voice was exceptional. Despite these overwhelming fears, Alice pressed forward, determined to conquer her demons and prove to herself that she could deliver when it mattered most. When she finally stepped onto the Britain's Got Talent stage in 2013, something miraculous happened. Perhaps it was the change of venue, or perhaps she had simply found the inner strength to push through her anxiety. As the opening notes of My Funny Valentine filled the studio, the audience and judges fell under a spell. Her voice was crystalline and emotionally resonant, carrying a maturity and sophistication that seemed almost impossible from someone who had spent most of her life struggling in silence. The judges sat in stunned silence as she performed, and when she finished, Simon Cowell, a man known for rarely showing genuine emotion, leaned forward with genuine admiration in his eyes. He told her that she possessed a voice like liquid gold, a compliment that would immediately transform her life. Within days, the video of her audition went viral. Millions of people around the world watched that 3-minute performance and felt something profound and inexplicable. Alice Fredenham became an overnight sensation, the toast of social media, with everyone from casual viewers to industry insiders predicting that she would win the entire competition and launch a spectacular career. The sudden attention, however, brought with it immense pressure. When Alice returned for the semi-final rounds, she found herself in an entirely different position. The expectations were crushing, both from her newfound fanbase and from the show's producers and judges. Everyone believed she would be the show's winner. Everyone assumed she would sign a record deal and begin her ascent to stardom. But behind the scenes, cracks were beginning to form. The production team made a last-minute decision to change the song she had prepared. This seemingly small change threw her entire psychological preparation off balance. Her anxiety returned with a vengeance, and on the night of her semi-final performance, it was painfully evident that something was wrong. She looked visibly shaken, her confidence visibly shattered. While her voice remained technically beautiful, it lacked the magical quality that had made her audition so captivating. The audience could sense her distress, and when the results were announced, Alice was eliminated from the competition. The girl with the golden voice, who had seemed destined for greatness just weeks earlier, was gone from the stage almost as suddenly as she had arrived. For fans who had invested emotionally in her journey, the disappointment was acute. But they remained hopeful. Surely, they reasoned, a record label would sign her immediately. Surely, they would see album announcements, interviews, and tour dates in the coming months. Alice had all the ingredients of a successful artist: genuine talent, an emotional connection with audiences, and a compelling personal story. Industry insiders were indeed interested. Sony Music reportedly offered her a demo deal shortly after her appearance on the show. This wasn't a full recording contract, but it represented a significant opportunity, the kind that many talented musicians never receive in their entire careers. Alice entered the studio with renewed hope, finally ready to translate her viral moment into a professional music career. She recorded material, collaborated with producers, and tried to create an album that would capture the essence of what had made her audition so powerful. Yet as quickly as that door opened, it slammed shut. Sony ultimately decided not to move forward with a full album release. No official statement was made public, but industry sources suggested that her distinctive style, rooted firmly in vintage jazz rather than contemporary pop, didn't align with what the label was looking to promote at that moment. Alice's musical sensibilities were too traditional, too niche, too unmarketable for the mainstream audience Sony was targeting. It was a professional rejection, certainly, but for Alice, it became something far more personal. She had already harbored significant doubts about the path she was on. The intense scrutiny that came with being a television personality, the constant pressure to perform and be visible, the way the media dissected every aspect of her personal life, all of it clashed fundamentally with who she was as a person. She had always been private, introspective, and deeply sensitive. The machinery of the entertainment industry, with its demands for constant content and public presence, felt antithetical to her nature. As months turned into years, Alice quietly withdrew from public life. The official website that had once featured her news and media appearances went offline. Her social media accounts, which fans had used to connect with her directly, became dormant. She made no formal announcement about retiring or taking a break. There was no dramatic statement, no tearful interview explaining her decision. She simply faded away, leaving millions of people wondering what had happened to the woman whose voice had moved them so deeply. For those who tried to follow her career, the silence was deeply frustrating and concerning. It became increasingly clear that Alice was deliberately removing herself from the public eye, choosing privacy over the continued pursuit of fame. In the rare interviews she gave during this period of withdrawal, Alice was brutally honest about her mental health struggles. She described panic attacks, so severe they would paralyze her before performances. She spoke about the constant battle with self-doubt and the crushing anxiety that came with being the subject of public scrutiny. As the music industry became increasingly dependent on social media presence and constant self-promotion, the pressure on artists like Alice intensified dramatically. For someone already struggling with anxiety and performance-related trauma, these demands became virtually impossible to meet. She had the talent and the emotional depth that great artists possess, but she lacked the psychological resilience that the modern entertainment industry demanded. By 2016, Alice had virtually no public presence remaining. She was no longer attending events, no longer posting on social media, and no longer pursuing her music career in any visible way. However, the story of Alice Fredenham didn't end in complete silence. Around 2014 and 2015, she began performing occasionally at small, low-pressure events like charity concerts and local showcases. These performances weren't heavily promoted. They were announced through small flyers and word of mouth, known only to dedicated local audiences. For Alice, these intimate settings provided something that large-scale performances couldn't: control and safety. She could sing in front of people who appreciated her work without the crushing weight of national television exposure. During this same period, recognizing that the traditional music industry had failed her, Alice turned to her remaining fan base for support. In early 2015, she launched a Kickstarter campaign to fund a debut album. The initial goal was modest, £30,000. To her relief and their credit, her loyal fans responded with genuine enthusiasm. By the end of the campaign, over £40,000 had been pledged, a clear indication that despite her absence from the mainstream spotlight, there remained a devoted core of listeners who believed in her talent and wanted to support her directly. The album that resulted from this crowdfunding effort was titled Under the Covers, a collection of jazz and soul standards that represented Alice's true musical identity. Unlike many reality television artists who attempt to reinvent themselves after their 15 minutes of fame, Alice refused to compromise. The album was intimate, restrained, and deeply rooted in vintage ballads, exactly what fans had fallen in love with during her BGT audition. Critical reception was positive among those who heard it. Music blogs, fan forums, and serious listeners praised the clarity and purity of her voice, the subtle emotion in her delivery, and her unwillingness to chase trends. She had remained true to herself, something remarkably few artists manage to do once they enter the entertainment machine. Yet critical appreciation didn't translate to commercial success. Under the Covers suffered from the same distribution and promotional challenges that plague most independent releases. Without a major label behind her, there was no infrastructure to push the album into retail stores, onto radio stations, or into algorithmic playlists. There were no marketing campaigns, no interviews, no coordinated publicity push. As a result, the album reached only her existing fan base and never penetrated the broader market. Following its release, many fans hoped this would signal a full return to music, a launching pad for future projects and performances. But after a handful of small live performances, Alice once again retreated from visibility. There were no follow-up singles, no music videos, no updates of any kind. She simply disappeared again, and this pattern of brief emergence, followed by deeper withdrawal, began to define her relationship with the public. By 2023, curiosity about Alice's current whereabouts resurfaced. A local newspaper attempted to contact her for an update, only to find their inquiries went unanswered. Then came confirmation that shocked her remaining fans. Cherry Red Records, the independent label that had distributed her album, revealed to journalists that Alice has retired from the music industry and wishes to retain her privacy. It was an official acknowledgement, finally, that this wasn't temporary. This wasn't a break or a hiatus. Alice had made a permanent decision to step away from music and public life entirely. Today, Alice Fredenham exists primarily in digital archives and the memories of those who discovered her voice during her brief moment in the spotlight. Her Britain's Got Talent audition remains one of the most watched and most discussed in the show's history. Fans still comment on it, still express their desire to hear new music from her, still wonder what might have been had circumstances been different. Her story serves as a powerful reminder that talent alone isn't sufficient to sustain a career in entertainment. Mental health, personal well-being, and alignment between an artist's values and the industry's demands are equally crucial. For Alice, the cost of pursuing a career in music while struggling with severe anxiety simply became too high. She chose her peace of mind over fame, her privacy over success, and her happiness over the spotlight. Whether Alice will ever record again remains unknown. No one from her camp has suggested any future musical projects. But for the fans who fell in love with her voice, her legacy endures. She proved that authentic emotion and genuine talent still matter, even in an age of manufactured celebrity and algorithmic content. Her quiet retirement is, in its own way, as powerful a statement as any comeback could be. Alice Fredenham found her voice, moved millions of people with it, and then had the courage to walk away. In an industry built on ego and ambition, her choice to prioritize her own well-being stands as an act of quiet rebellion and profound wisdom. Like, subscribe, and follow for more.